Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. How are you guys doing? I hope you're doing amazing. I'm back with another video. Today's video is a little different. Let's just get right into it. Today's topic is going to be on a book that I have recently finished reading. It's one of the books that I came across that I saw was very hyped up. So I thought, why not discuss some of the key takeaways, key quotes, key lessons that I learned from this book. So the book is none other than The Courage to Be Disliked. Now, this was surfacing on TikTok, and it has been surfacing on TikTok for a long while now. This is a book by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga, and this claims to be the Japanese phenomenon that shows you how to change your life and achieve real happiness. This book revolves around a conversation between two people, one of them being a philosopher and the other one is a youth. So you can see like there's two different dialogues. So we have a youth perspective and then the philosopher, and the youth is very accusatory, for lack of a better word. They basically just are quick to attack anything or any idea that the philosopher has, and honestly in my head it kind of mirrors like how Gen Z has become modern day. The youth is just basically picking apart any kind of sort of pockets of wisdom that the philosopher has to offer. Me of like cancel culture with Gen Z. It kind of reminded me of Gen Z youth, if I'm being honest, and the philosopher was like this sort of wise old man in my head that was kind of telling the youth, calm down, think about it with a clear open mind, and then really walking him through different ways of thinking about certain things. One key thing that the author really maintains throughout this book is that all problems are interpersonal problems. And even if we just think about this for a second, if it was just me on this earth and nobody else, and if it was just you on this earth and no other human being, why would we have any problems? Why would there be mindset clashes? Why would there be ideas clashing? Why would disagreements or arguments even exist? It's because there's more than one person on earth and we have to coexist with multiple different people. So the author really emphasizes this. They claim that the world would be free of all problems if one inhabited the earth alone. Of course, such a world isn't possible. That's why we run into problems. Another key concept that the author introduces to us is the idea of vertical relationships and horizontal relationships. Now, vertical relationships are hierarchical, meaning there is one figure who is in authority and the other figure maybe is of a lower rank in authority. Think of maybe you and your boss, or any situation where A is above B and B is below A. And then we have horizontal relationships which form on the basis of equals. So this would be A equals B, we're equal in consciousness, and we feel comfortable asserting what needs to be asserted because A is equal to B, right? And so the author goes on to say that in order to form good interpersonal relationships, a level of distance is required. And they use the analogy of bringing a book very close to your face. So if I hold this book up right up to my face, I can no longer see the words or the writing, right? And that's basically the example that the author uses here. We're saying if you get too close to another person, then there's no room for distance and you become entangled in each other's interpersonal threads, which obviously can be difficult because it's difficult just managing your own interpersonal problems and threads, let alone becoming entangled with another's. So in the same way we can't read a book super close to our face, we can't become super close to another person to the point where we can't breathe. We become stuck to each other and it becomes difficult to even speak to each other. Now, obviously, a point about distance is that the distance shouldn't be so large because we do need a certain amount of proximity and balance is key here. So another point that the author touches on is that being special is a life goal for many people because many people believe that being normal equates to being incapable, which just isn't true. Now, I had some points to say about this because I do think we need to feel special to some degree, because otherwise, what is our life purpose? What are we put on this earth to do? For people who follow religion, maybe they can find a purpose, right? But for others, like, they need a life purpose. They need to be helping the community in some sort of way. They need to be of value to somebody else. I think it's more a fear of not being needed. Another idea that the author presents to us is the idea of separating one's tasks from another's. So this means separating your tasks from maybe, say, a task of your friends. An example of this would be if I have a friend and I obviously exist on my own, right? We're two separate entities and we're two separate beings. Now, say I need to, I don't know, set a boundary with this friend. I need to tell this friend, hey, when you did X, Y, and Z, I didn't appreciate it. I don't want to see you doing this again. I'm here overthinking, okay, what is my friend gonna say about this? Is she gonna think I'm too uptight for setting boundaries? Me overthinking this whole process would just be unnecessary, right? It's not my task. What the other person thinks or feels after I have come and done my task, which was to set the boundary. I did my task. I did my part. Okay, now what she thinks of me, what she has to say, whatever her opinions and thoughts are, that is none of my concern, and that's a task for her to navigate, right? So the issue arises when I start to sort of take that task on for myself and think for her and be like, no, but she's thinking X, Y, and Z, and just overthinking this whole thing when I'm literally wasting brain space thinking about that. So this is what the author means by separating tasks. What is my task is not another person's task, and what's another person's task is not my task. And becoming entangled in another person's task will only lead to pain. Which ties into the next key idea, which is to live in the present. There's nothing to even add on to this idea. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow is a mystery. This also kind of ties into another key idea the author raises, which is that the desire for recognition can become a prison in the same way that the desire for praise is a prison. Now, you might not realize it, but although you think you like being praised, you give another person power when you assign a lot of meaning to their praise or you assign a lot of meaning to their rejection, because they can uplift you, but they can also tear you down. So you don't ever want to become a puppet to somebody else's words or actions, right? Either way, it will be a prison cell that you need to separate yourself from, and you need to ensure that either way you are not impacted deeply. And I know it's easier said than done, but this is the best way to ensure happiness. The author sort of reframed praise in a very intriguing way, and this is a way that I personally never thought of praise as. The author basically explained it as a passing of judgment of a person of ability onto a person of no ability. They use the example of a mother and child. When a mother tells her child, "Good work," when they set the dinner table correctly, if you swap the child for the husband, she's not going to tell the husband "good work" or praise him excessively as she would for the child. In fact, she'll even believe that the husband should contribute to more chores, do more work around the house. So either she'll simply pass on a thank you or she'll just brush it off. But the reason why she doesn't excessively praise the husband is because she views the husband as an equal, whereas she views the child as someone beneath her or of lesser ability. In this way, the mother unconsciously creates a hierarchical relationship with the child, in which the child is beneath her. Now, this was a little intriguing and thought-provoking, because obviously a mother wants the best for her child. So when she views the child, her own child too, beneath her, it sort of struck the wrong chords with me. I don't know how to feel about this, but it's definitely a different perspective or spin on the act of praising one. Honestly made me think that it's even disrespectful to praise a child, because we're literally giving them the impression that they're beneath us or they're of lesser value to us. It kind of didn't sit right with me. I mean, if you think about it, the child is of lesser ability than a full functioning adult, so I guess this makes sense. The author also employs the example of a dog. So when you tell a dog "roll over," it's because you think the dog is of lesser ability, and that's what you're conveying when you're commanding the dog to sit, stand, or roll over. They're really conveying that the being is beneath them and needs and requires their praise. So the goal is to manipulate someone of lesser ability. And the author mentions that this does not stem from gratitude or respect, because it implies that the person who utters such words is in a position to assess what constitutes as a good job. Saying good job is a way of being talked down to. Each time someone praises you, you become less of an equal and more like a child who seeks approval, who yearns for that praise. The person praising you has to believe that they are worthy of praising you, and it can get very manipulative. What I also liked is that the author kind of introduces us to a model of pursuing the process of happiness. And in this model, it's basically a 3-step model, which starts with step 1 being self-acceptance, step 2 being confidence in others, and step 3 being contribution to others. And the author basically walks us through how happiness can transpire through this process. The author also mentions that if you're doing this for the sake of recognition or approval, because your intentions come with expectations, maybe some sort of reward that you're seeking, and you will not feel the true fruit of happiness. So this is a warning from the author. Now let's go through each step. So first is self-acceptance. And this is important because once you accept that you are flawed, that you have all these traits, that maybe some of them you're proud of, some of them you're not, then you can sort of move on with your life, right? The author says here that with self-acceptance, on the other hand, if one cannot do something, one is simply accepting one's incapable self as is and is moving forward so that one can do whatever one can. So in simpler terms, self-acceptance through the author's perspective means accepting what your current circumstances are and what is in your control and what isn't. And this is a more proactive lens on how you can go about changing what is within your control, and that's why they sort of emphasize this self-acceptance. So basically they're saying that we need to accept what is irreplaceable, accept this me, this current version of myself just as I am, so that I can center on what needs to improve and what really needs to be changed, so that I can attain the courage to change what I can change. And that is self-acceptance. The author uses the example or analogy of if you got a 60% on a test. Say you got a 60%, but you tell yourself, I just happened to get unlucky this time around. And the real me is 100%. That is self-affirmation. By contrast, if one accepts oneself as one is at 60% and thinks to oneself, how should I go about getting closer to 100%? That is self-acceptance. So the author is basically saying that through self-acceptance, we can strive towards a better future, bringing about what changes need to be made in our lives. Placing your confidence in others allows you to collaborate with others, because if you're holding all the burdens of the world on your shoulders and you have zero confidence in others, then you can imagine how that's going to turn out, right? You're going to take on more than you can handle. Author sort of ends with that last step of the contribution to others. Contributing to others derives a sense of doing something for one's community and being of use to someone. And this is like something that almost every religion talks about, right? Being of use to community, providing community service, doing acts of good and good deeds for others. The authors mention like even old people or bedridden people. You may not think that they're of use to the community, but they are, because just by simply being there, they bring others happiness, they glue together families, they plant seeds of wisdom, and it would sadden other members of the community if something were to happen to them. So in this way, they are of value to the community. And you can think of it as they support the psychological well-being of a family system. Now, the author is very obsessed with Adlerian psychology, and this book does take on that lens. And this type of psychology is highly critical of reward and punishment education, because it seeks to manipulate children. But basically, whether we praise or rebuke children, the end goal is always manipulation, which is sort of lingering in the background of our minds. Another point that I want to touch on is that our lives are a series of dots translated as moments rather than a linear, predictable line. we don't really know what's going to happen next most of the time. And so we should romanticize the journey of becoming rather than the final destination or the end goal, because there will always be another goal. There will always be something else that we're striving to become, striving to achieve. If you don't enjoy the process of becoming and you're always like, okay, check, okay, done, what's next, then you're not really living life, you're not enjoying it, and you're kind of just crossing off this impossible bucket list that will never end. Enjoy the process of becoming and romanticize the journey rather than the end goal. One quote that stood out to me was, "It is important not with what one is born with, but what use one makes of the equipment that they are given." This was actually so intriguing because, you know, we might not have been dealt the best cards in life, but it doesn't really matter if our cards are absolute trash. It matters how we optimize those cards to work in our favor and what use we make with the few good cards that we've been dealt. So yeah, that's all I had to say about this book. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. Leave any comments or questions down below. Subscribe, like the video as always, and I'll see you guys later. Love you guys. Bye!